I'm going to record this. The second thing you want to jump into would be your grid. So Command Shift apostrophe is where you see the grid. This is a very simple grid. I prefer to have one a little more complex. Oh, a cat. So I'm going to click up here to activate or to essentially select this artboard. And here's where we get our gutter widths, the amount of columns. So I'm just going to leave my gutter because I like what is happening here, but I would like to add a few more. So I'm going to go with an 8-column grid. Again, this is going to help you immensely, whether you are used to working a grid or not. But for me, after 400 years of being in the industry, I am constantly doing this. I'm constantly doing this when I'm doing a layout. I'm constantly doing this, a print layout when I'm doing a web as well. So
Hello,
command.
Miss.
Hi, yes.
How did you get the grid again?
Command Shift apostrophe.
Okay.
So you'll just get used to turning that on and off just to check and confirm things. Okay, so what do we need to do first? We have to a little bit of text. So we have welcome to Ola, the best tacos in town. Where's my darn? So I'm just going to go ahead, whoops, and pop that in there first. So we always want to make sure that we get everything that is required on our artboards prior to getting wrapped up in all the other bits and pieces. Strongly suggest this because we tend to miss things often. So I just like to kind of keep everything we need there. So instead of having the text, I'm just going to break this up. So I'm just going to say welcome to. And then I'm going to grab a circle because perhaps maybe I imagine the logo to be in kind of a circle format. And we can add a little picture box here. So that represents that is an image, or we can also Command Shift square bracket, bring that to front. We could say Ola logo. So what else do we need? We need to have the best tacos in town. So again, I'm constantly just borrowing from something else. I hate retyping, I hate repasting. So I like to Option Shift and Option drag. So I just duplicate that. Okay, so now we have our basic copy. So it mentioned one of the lectures, we do have 2 onboarding screens. So it's really great to show people. Granted, generally there's probably more screens when it comes to onboarding, but there's only 2. I didn't want to hurt you guys too much, so I'm only giving you 2. But we do like to have a little status bar as to where we are, just like when you are on a website and it shows those little dots. If that homepage picture is sliding through, it'll maybe show that there's 4. So you know that when you get to the 3rd one, you're like, oh, what's that 3rd slider? Maybe it's going to say that that product I want is on sale. So we like to show where we are in the process. So I'm going to go over into our wireframes because I know that those have already been created. And as you can see, we are in the onboarding section on our mobile screens. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab those little dots, Command C, go back to my artboard and Command V to paste. So just a couple things to go over. When we do take things from our kits, they will come in as components. I suggest you just deleting those at this stage because we are going to need to create our own components. So best not to have a whole bunch of extras in there. So like I said, we have 2 onboarding screens. So that means we only need 2 dots. So I'm going to ungroup those, Command Shift G, and delete those. These are in the blue, but I'm not going to get wrapped up on that right now because I just want to get my elements in there. And I'm going to Command G to group these back up again. So what else do we need to have in here? So we have our welcome message, but what does someone need to do to get to the next screen? We're going to need a button. Perhaps they might swipe, but in case someone maybe might not be super intuitive that they need to swipe, we're just going to create a little button that maybe says next. So again, we could go. I'd like to do a pill format. And next. All right, so one last thing that we do always want to make sure is that people can skip through if they need to. If they're like, I've done this before, I don't feel like reading all your messages, even though there's 2 there, we add a little skip. We usually like to make it discreet because we generally want people to go through those onboardings, but we could make it small. So we could pop it down here if we do want to keep it, keep people in the know. Sometimes up at the top. I'm just going to leave it up there for now. So essentially now we have all the elements that we need on that first onboarding screen, but it looks a bit dodgy right now, right? This is not the font. I'm not going to be using Helvetica New. I want to choose a nice web font. So again, Google Fonts is good, but there are several front runners out there. Verdanda, Open Sans, Montserrat, a lot of those, I'm going to say all of them, a large percentage of the sites out there use those fonts. I don't want to see anything too wild in these because again, we need to think about accessibility for our customers and our users. So if we have, you know, really like, could be very cool in a print format, maybe like some sort of graffiti type font. It might not be easily readable to everyone. So again, we need to make it very clear. So I'm a big fan of Open Sans and Montserrat. So I'm just going to go Montserrat. And now we can start maybe figuring out a little bit of visual hierarchy, a few visuals that we want to actually have on there. And we can start building out a grayscale color palette as well to help outline the rest of our screens. So you can also start by doing that as well. It's probably a good start point to figure out or to nail down your grayscale colors. So I'm just going to just do a few different levels. And then we've got white. So as I showed previously, we can go ahead and highlight all of those and we're just going to hit the plus sign. And now we have our colors all in there. We've got our color codes. Brilliant. So now we can start to figure out what we want to use for our headlines, the headline fonts. So I'm going to bring this up. So let's just say I want my headlines to all be 30, and I also want them to be bold. Maybe if I'm coloring or labeling a picture or an element, maybe we want to make this, let's just say, whoopsies. That is not what I meant to do. 25. This is maybe a second heading, second headline. So I'm going to stick with bold again, but this is our main one. It may be a little bit larger than that. We're going to go 33, 20. Again, we do want to have contrast when we have our, we call these H1, maybe H2, maybe something between those. So I'm just going to go ahead and create something between. So we have 33, 25, and 20. These are our headline fonts. So I'm going to select all those. I'm going to hit my plus sign. So now I have them all here. We can also go H1, H2, and H3. We can add this sucker in there as well. Oopsies. And we're going to just call this pick label, just so we don't need to use that for our body copy unless we decide to as we get along. This is our button copy, so I would like that to be a little bit heavier. I'm happy with, say, the 20. I'm just going to keep everything in this same gray color. Button text. Okay, and as we get along, and let's just add this little sucker as well. We'll call this fine print. And again, these might change as we start to develop our site. We might circle back and adjust, but for now we have a little bit to start from. So first, let's fix these little suckers. So let's ungroup them. Again, we always want to make sure we're labeling which screen we are on exactly. So if we are on this screen, it's going to be darker, and then we have one more screen, so it's going to be shaded back. And now let's select all of those. Let's center them all up. Make sure we're centered into our screen. And I'm fairly happy with this, how this looks like at this stage of the game. I probably want to bring this type up a little bit more. There's that heading 2, so nice and easy. I can just go ahead and select those. So without me getting, I always get wrapped up now a little bit, making everything a little more perfect, but this is just a demo, so I'm going to stop myself. But say if we want to have a picture or maybe a color wash in the background, we can just do that by adding a little fill there. Send that to back. That's a little bit dark, so I think I want to add one more mid-tone. So again, that's where you're going to start to build this up. You will get to a point where if you end up with a whole giant list of these, especially if we're doing a small website, that's where we're going to need to circle back, because we don't want it to look like clown college. We just want to make sure we have a nice range that we can work with. So we can, like I said, you can do this, you know, with a color shade. You can add, at this stage, you would need to add picture because it has a shade. I already know that this might be a color, or like I said, it might be some hero type image. So there we go. We've got onboarding screen number 1. Because our second screen is to follow, we generally want our text and our buttons and all of these to land in the same spot. We don't want these buttons to jump around anywhere on our next screen. It's very distracting for our user. So instead, I'm going to highlight this top piece. Again, I'm going to Option Shift. So now I just duplicate this and I'm going to slide it over. Immediately before I get any further, I'm going to call this onboarding 2. And let's go back to here. And what do we need to have on our second onboarding screen? Sign up to use. So again, I'm just going to copy all of that information, jump back into XD, and I'm going to paste that in. Again, we just don't want to forget anything. So this is our last screen. So nice and easy. I'm just going to reverse those. We can have skip on here, but it's our last screen, so you could go either way. You could delete this, you could leave it in there, etc. It doesn't really matter. But now we know that we need to have some sort of message that's going to have a field to fill in our information. So